Ethan Graves was a young man who never thought his life would become part of a story that people would talk about one day. When he was 21, he joined a humanitarian project on a small colony world called Threx 4. It was one of those faraway planets that humanity had recently reached through the new alliance with alien civilizations. The mission was simple: help rebuild after a natural disaster and strengthen the friendship between humans and the Threxian race. Threx 4 was a peaceful but struggling world. The Threxians were tall and graceful, with skin that shimmered softly under sunlight and eyes that reflected silver light. They lived in villages made of crystal-like stone, near lakes that glowed faintly blue in the dark. Their culture was calm and kind, and they welcomed humans warmly, especially those who came to help. The people of Threx 4 had lost their crops after a storm that lasted for weeks, and the humans were there to repair the damage and teach them about new energy systems. Ethan was not a soldier or a leader. He was an engineer who loved fixing things. His job was to repair the solar generators and purifiers that powered the colony's farms and homes. Every morning he woke up before sunrise, gathered his tools, and walked through the village paths while the air shimmered with morning mist. He liked the quiet work. He liked seeing the lights come back on in homes after a long night of darkness. He didn't realize that his kindness and laughter would someday change not just one life, but the link between two species. On his second week on Threx 4, Ethan met a young Threxian girl named Liara. She couldn't have been more than 10 by human standards, small and curious, with bright silver eyes that seemed to hold questions about everything in the universe. She followed him everywhere. If he fixed a generator, she sat beside him and watched. If he tested water filters, she asked how the machines made the water taste clean. She was full of life and questions, and Ethan found her curiosity both funny and refreshing. Liara liked to mimic human words, sometimes mixing them with her own language in strange ways. She asked Ethan about things she had only read in human books: oceans, clouds, chocolate, music, and something called marriage. That last one came up one sunny afternoon when Ethan was repairing the main water purifier in the center of the village. He was sweating under the heat, his hands covered in grease, when Liara crouched beside him and said, "What is this? Marriage? I read it in your stories," Ethan smiled. "It's when two people promise to care for each other. They decide to stay together and share their lives," Liara blinked. "Promise? Like a bond?" "Kind of," Ethan said, tightening a bolt. "It's a promise made from the heart." Liara tilted her head, thinking. Then, with a serious expression that almost made Ethan laugh, she said, "So, if I make a promise, can I marry you when I grow up?" Ethan nearly dropped his wrench. "What?" he said, laughing. The workers nearby laughed too. The Threxian elders smiled gently at the child's boldness. It was such an innocent question, yet it was said with such honesty that it disarmed everyone. Liara kept staring, waiting for an answer. "Well," Ethan said, still smiling, "sure, Liara. When you grow up, come find me. We'll see." His tone was playful, just a joke to make her laugh. Her eyes sparkled. "Promise?" she said softly. He chuckled again. "Promise." The little alien smiled wide, her silver eyes glowing like small moons. Then she ran off, laughing and shouting something in her own language. Ethan watched her go, amused and a little touched. It was such a simple, innocent moment that he didn't think much about it afterward. To him, it was just a light-hearted conversation with a curious child. He didn't realize that those words would travel across years and stars. The mission on Threx 4 continued for several more months. Humans helped rebuild farms, taught Threxians how to use new solar tools, and shared songs and food. The two species grew close, and a genuine friendship was formed. When the time came for the human team to leave, the Threxians held a farewell ceremony. Liara stood among the crowd, waving a small piece of metal she had shaped into a heart. She ran to Ethan and pressed it into his hand. "So you don't forget your promise," she said with a bright smile. Ethan smiled back, touched by the gesture. "I won't forget," he said gently, not realizing how much she believed those words. Years passed. Ethan returned to Earth and continued his work as an engineer. The world changed quickly. Humans spread across the stars, opening trade and alliances with dozens of species. Space travel became almost ordinary, but Ethan's life was quiet. He worked for a floating city over the Pacific, maintaining the energy systems that powered the platform. He was respected but lonely. The years rolled by like waves, smooth but silent. Sometimes he would look at that small metal heart he kept in a box on his shelf. He had forgotten most of the faces from Threx 4, but not the bright-eyed child who had followed him around with endless questions. Whenever he thought of her, he smiled. To him, it was a fond memory from a simpler time. Then came that night. It was raining heavily outside his apartment window. Lightning flashed across the sky, reflecting on the water below. Ethan sat on his couch, drinking tea and watching the storm. It was late, and he was thinking about taking a vacation to one of the colony worlds again, maybe to see old friends. His thoughts were interrupted by a sharp sound. The doorbell rang. He frowned. It was almost midnight. Who would visit him at that hour? He walked to the door, expecting maybe a delivery drone or a neighbor. When he opened it, the wind pushed in a cool burst of rain, and behind it stood a tall, glowing figure. At first, he thought his eyes were playing tricks on him. The visitor was unlike any human. Tall and graceful, her skin faintly glowing in the dark, her silver eyes shimmering like starlight. She wore a long robe made of soft fabric that seemed to move like liquid light. For a second, Ethan thought she was some kind of official messenger from the Threxian Council. Then she spoke, and his heart almost stopped. "Ethan Graves," she said in a calm, melodic voice. "I have come for your promise." He froze. The words hit something deep inside his memory. That tone, that name, the way she said promise. It all rushed back, the hot sun of Threx 4, the laughter, the curious child asking about marriage. He stared at her in disbelief. "Wait," he whispered. "Liara?" She smiled gently. "You remember?" Ethan stepped back, unable to process what he was seeing. The little girl he had met 18 years ago was now a woman. Tall, elegant, confident, and unmistakably Threxian. Time had changed her, but those same silver eyes still carried that familiar spark of curiosity. It was like looking at a memory that had come to life. "I can't believe this," he said, almost laughing. "That was a joke. You actually came all this way?" Liara tilted her head the same way she used to as a child. "Among my people, a promise is not a joke," she said softly. "It is a bond between hearts. You gave me your word, Ethan Graves." He blinked, lost between amusement and disbelief. "That was 18 years ago," she nodded. 18 years, 3 months, and 12 days, she said with perfect precision. "I have waited long enough." Ethan didn't know whether to laugh or apologize. It was too much for his tired brain. But even as confusion filled his mind, something else stirred inside him. A strange warmth, a feeling he hadn't experienced in years. Maybe it was nostalgia, or maybe it was the look in her eyes, calm but full of meaning. He stepped aside, motioning for her to come in. "You'd better tell me everything," he said quietly. Liara smiled, her silver eyes shining as she stepped inside his home. The faint glow from her skin lit up the small room, reflecting on the rain-streaked windows. She looked around curiously, touching the small human objects, photos, books, plants. "You live alone," she observed. "Still fixing things?" "Always," Ethan said with a small laugh. "It's what I do best." She turned to him, her expression softening. "And keeping promises?" Ethan froze again, meeting her gaze. There was no mockery in her voice, no anger, only quiet faith. That same belief she had carried as a child was still there, shining brighter than ever. He didn't know what to say, but for the first time in years he felt something shift in his heart. Outside, the storm raged on, but inside that small apartment, something long forgotten began to stir, a memory of a promise, and the strange power it could hold across time and stars. Ethan watched her closely as she moved around the apartment, touching small objects and examining the things of a human home with quiet fascination. She didn't rush, but every movement carried purpose, as if she wanted to remember every detail. Her silver eyes glimmered under the soft glow of the ceiling lamp, and the faint shimmer of her skin made her appear almost unreal, like a figure from a dream. He finally spoke, his voice hesitant. "Liara, it's been 18 years. You're here because of a promise I made when you were a child." She turned toward him, the same calm intensity in her eyes. "Yes, you promised. Among my people, promises are sacred. I believed you meant it, even though I was just a child. That belief guided me for years." Ethan rubbed the back of his neck, feeling both guilt and wonder. I didn't think about it after that day. I was joking. To make you laugh." Her lips curved slightly in a smile, soft and unthreatening. "I did not see it as a joke. To me it was hope. Humanity, even in a single person, can be trusted. That hope helped me survive and grow even when the world was harsh. Ethan paused. He had never considered that something as small as a child's promise could have such a deep effect. He had spent his life solving problems with machines and circuits, never imagining that his words, even said casually, could shape another being's life. Yet here she was, standing in his apartment, proof that promises could matter more than he had ever known. The days following her arrival were strange and disorienting for Ethan. Liara didn't rush to push the matter of the promise. Instead, she immersed herself in human culture, asking endless questions about everything from the floating cities to the Earth's oceans. She laughed at his old jokes, commented on his cooking experiments, and even helped him repair the apartment's small power generator when it occasionally faltered. She was incredibly intelligent, quick to learn and precise in her observations. She had grown into a graceful young woman, but she also retained the childlike curiosity that had first drawn Ethan's attention years ago. Every now and then she would glance at him with the same piercing gaze, and he would feel the weight of her words from that night at the door. Ethan tried to push his feelings aside. He had spent years living alone, content in routine. The last thing he expected was to have someone from another world, someone he had only known as a child, enter his life and disrupt it completely. But Liara was different. She was not only an alien, but also a bridge to a part of humanity he had almost forgotten. The part that believed in keeping promises, no matter how strange or inconvenient. One afternoon, as they walked together through the city's observation deck overlooking the glowing ocean, Liara spoke quietly. "I remember the day you promised me. You were fixing the water purifier, your hands covered in grease, and I asked you if I could marry you when I grew up. You laughed and said yes. I knew it was a joke to you, but it was not a joke to me." Ethan shook his head, a little embarrassed. "I really didn't think about it afterward. I didn't expect—" He trailed off, unable to find the words. "You did more than you know," Liara said softly. "I trained, I studied, I learned your language and customs because I wanted to understand you better. Because of you, I believed humans could be trusted. That belief saved me when my world was collapsing." Ethan felt a lump in his throat. He had always thought of himself as ordinary, someone who repaired machines and made life a little easier. Yet here was an alien woman standing before him whose life had been shaped by a single careless word from his mouth. "I never thought that a promise could mean so much," he said finally, his voice almost a whisper. "It does," she replied. "Even to a child, a promise is sacred. It can give hope, courage, and belief in something bigger than oneself. You gave me that hope. You gave me a reason to grow strong." Their time together was interrupted by the media. Rumors had already begun to spread. An alien ambassador staying with a human engineer? The story quickly caught attention. Some were curious, some mocked, but many were fascinated by the unusual bond between human and Threxian. Ethan felt uncomfortable being the center of attention, but Liara didn't seem to mind. She explained to him that this was part of being an ambassador. Her presence on Earth was not just personal, but a chance to strengthen interstellar relationships. Despite the pressures and the stares, she continued to remind him of the promise, not directly, not with demands, but through small acts. She would cook dishes she had learned from human recipes. She would show him a new understanding of Threxian technology. And sometimes, late at night, she would ask him to sit quietly and talk. One evening, she brought out a small mechanical device, shaped like a sun, with tiny lights that moved in circles. She set it on the table and looked at him with a smile. "Do you remember what this is?" Ethan looked at it, trying to place it. Then it clicked. "The village generator. You made a model of it?" She nodded. "I wanted to remember. When I was young, I watched you fix that generator. You brought light to my village. I wanted to carry that memory with me." Ethan felt something shift inside him. He realized that she wasn't here just because of a promise. She was here because humans, even in small acts, could leave a lasting impact. It wasn't about obligation. It was about the belief in something good and true. Days passed, and Ethan grew more comfortable around Liara. He saw her for who she truly was, intelligent, kind, patient, and curious. She was not the child he had once joked with. She was a full, strong individual with a mind and heart that matched any human he had ever known. And yet, the memory of that promise, that small joke made in the sunlit village, lingered between them. One rainy night, as the city lights reflected on the wet streets below, Liara sat beside him quietly. "Do you know why I came?" she asked softly. Ethan hesitated. "To remind me of a joke I made?" She shook her head gently. "No. I came because you taught me something important. Even when humans seem careless, even when words are spoken lightly, they can hold meaning. You showed me that promises are not empty. That one word can give hope across time and space." Ethan swallowed hard. He had never thought of his words in that way. A joke, a passing sentence, could be taken seriously and carried for nearly 2 decades. It was humbling and strangely inspiring. Liara continued. "When I left Threx 4, I worked hard. I trained to be part of the ambassador program. I learned to navigate the stars, understand humans, and protect my world. But I never forgot your promise. It reminded me that one human cared enough to be honest. That belief guided me through the hardest times." Ethan was silent. He had no idea what to say. He had never imagined that something so small could grow into such a powerful force. He felt a mixture of pride, guilt, and awe. "You don't have to worry," Liara said gently. "I am not here to force you to anything. I came because your word mattered. That is enough." Over the next few weeks, the connection between them deepened. They shared stories, meals, and small adventures. She explored the city with him, learning human ways, laughing at the strangest things, and helping him fix small problems. He began to realize that humanity's true strength wasn't in machines or technology alone. It was in their ability to care, to keep promises, and to inspire others. One evening, while sitting on the observation deck overlooking the glowing ocean, Ethan finally spoke. "I never thought a simple promise could matter so much. I didn't realize how much it could change someone's life." Liara turned to him, her eyes reflecting the shimmering waters. "It does matter, and sometimes the smallest gestures are the strongest. You reminded me that hope is possible. You reminded me that one word can travel farther than any ship, farther than any star." Ethan felt a surge of emotion. He looked at her, seeing not just the alien woman who had appeared at his door, but the embodiment of the bond that humans could create through care, honesty, and courage. The promise had started as a joke, but it had become something real, something powerful, something that reminded him why humans were worth believing in. The city lights below seemed to shine brighter that night, reflecting the strange, quiet magic of hope, promise, and connection across worlds. Ethan realized that their journey together was only beginning. The promise he had made as a young man had grown into something neither of them could ignore. And as Liara stood beside him, smiling gently, he understood that what mattered most was not the joke, not the time, not the distance. It was the human heart that had kept its word, even when it seemed small, even when it seemed forgotten, and that heart had reached farther than he had ever imagined. Ethan couldn't sleep that night. The city lights reflected on the rain-slick streets below, and he kept thinking about Liara. She wasn't just an alien from another world. She was someone whose life had been shaped by a simple, careless promise he had made as a young man. He had never imagined that a joke could travel across stars and decades to arrive on his doorstep. Liara, on the other hand, seemed calm and composed as always. She moved through his apartment with quiet confidence, occasionally pausing to observe objects, touching them lightly as if learning about him through the smallest details. Ethan watched her, torn between awe and worry. How could a relationship like this work? How could he bridge the gap between 2 species, 2 worlds, 2 lifetimes of experiences? The next morning, Ethan took her to the floating city's council headquarters. Officially, she was here as part of a diplomatic mission, but unofficially, she had come for him. The council members, a mix of humans and interstellar representatives, were polite but cautious. They asked her questions about her work, her travels, and her knowledge of human society. She answered each one with grace, but Ethan could see the tension in her eyes. The Threxian Council had also sent a message. They disapproved of her closeness to a human. During a break, Ethan and Liara walked along the observation deck. "They don't understand," Ethan said quietly. "They think it's wrong. That your attention should be on your work, not..." Liara shook her head gently. "They do not understand promises the way humans do. But I am not here to defy them. I am here because you kept a word. That is more important than protocol." Ethan felt a mixture of pride and fear. Her words reminded him of the power of honesty, of humanity's strength not in weapons or laws but in integrity and care. Yet the political reality was difficult. Her superiors wanted her back on Threx 4 immediately. They had issued a strict order for her return, claiming her personal attachment to a human compromised her role as ambassador. The thought of her leaving filled Ethan with a strange emptiness. "Liara, if you go, I won't see you again for years, maybe decades. Is it worth it?" Her eyes softened. "Ethan, I am not here for myself. I am here because you taught me that one human's word could matter more than any law or rule. That belief guided me for years, gave me courage when my world was in danger. I cannot ignore that." Over the next few days, Ethan realized that he could not let her leave without trying to change the Council's mind. He studied Threxian diplomatic protocols, learning quickly how decisions were made and how humans were viewed by alien civilizations. He discovered that the promise she spoke of was taken seriously not because of tradition alone, but because it symbolized trust between species. Ethan decided to act. He requested an audience with the Threxian Council on their own planet. It was unprecedented for a human to be summoned in this way, but Liara vouched for him. Together they boarded a sleek starship bound for Threx 4, traveling through the vast expanse of space in silence, each lost in thought. Ethan kept glancing at her, noting how much she had grown, how much she reminded him of the child who had once sat beside him during repairs, wide-eyed and curious. When they arrived, the Threxian Council waited in the grand hall of crystal towers, the walls shimmering with natural light. Council members regarded them with a mix of suspicion and curiosity. Ethan stepped forward, feeling small in the midst of such grandeur, but he remembered why he was there. He spoke carefully, clearly, and honestly. "I am not here to demand anything," he began. "I am here to speak of promises. Many of you see this as a matter of rules and protocol, but you must understand what a promise truly is. Liara has told me about the vow I made to her as a child, almost as a joke. I did not expect it to matter, but it did. It guided her life, inspired her to become strong, to believe in humans, and to work for peace. That is not a small thing." The council remained silent. Ethan continued, his voice firm yet respectful. "What we humans value is our word. When we say something, even lightly, it carries meaning. Promises are more than words. They are actions, intentions, and trust. You taught her to be strong, but she learned hope from me. That hope led to wisdom, and wisdom led her back here. Not for herself, but to honor what she believed in. Can you truly say that is wrong?" A long pause followed. Council members whispered to one another in their melodic language. Liara stood quietly beside Ethan, her silver eyes shining, showing trust in his words. After a few tense moments, the head counselor spoke, her voice calm but commanding. "Your words reflect understanding, human. You see beyond your species. You honor a promise not because you must, but because it is right. That is rare and commendable." Ethan felt a small surge of hope. Then, would Liara be allowed to stay, at least for a time, to complete her mission and maintain her personal connections? The counselors exchanged glances, then nodded. "You may stay," the head counselor said finally. "Her role as ambassador will continue and your bond will not be forbidden. But remember, humans are unpredictable. That is both your strength and your risk." Liara's face lit up with a gentle smile. Ethan could hardly believe it. Months of worry, preparation, and fear had led to this moment. He stepped forward and took her hand, feeling the warmth and reassurance that had first drawn him to her as a child. Over the following weeks, life settled into a rhythm. Liara continued her diplomatic work while also spending time with Ethan. They explored the colony's crystalline forests, repaired machinery, shared meals, and learned from one another. Through her presence, Ethan saw the galaxy differently. He realized that humanity's true power lay not only in technology or courage, but in the integrity of their actions and the honesty of their word. Liara, in turn, discovered the depth of human kindness and creativity. She saw how small gestures could inspire hope and courage across generations. Each day she grew closer to understanding why humans were capable of so much, and why the promise of one young man could guide her entire life. One evening, standing on a cliff overlooking a lake that shimmered under 2 moons, Ethan finally spoke. "I never imagined that a promise I made on a whim could mean so much. You changed my life, Liara, as much as I, unknowingly, changed yours." She looked at him, eyes reflecting the stars above. "It is not just me who was changed. You reminded me that humans are more than what they appear. One word, one gesture can travel farther than any ship or message. You showed me that belief and hope are stronger than fear." Ethan felt a surge of emotion. He realized that the journey they had shared was not about a joke, a promise, or even marriage. It was about trust, hope, and the enduring power of kindness. The promise had been a bridge, connecting not only two people but two worlds. As the days passed, the story of Ethan and Liara spread across the galaxy. Humans and Threxians alike marveled at the bond formed from a simple promise. Many laughed at the idea of an alien ambassador seeking a human engineer, but most understood the deeper truth. Humanity's greatest strength was their ability to care, to honor their word, and to inspire hope even in impossible situations. Months later, the Threxian Council allowed a symbolic ceremony to celebrate the bond between human and Threxian, not as a traditional marriage, but as a union of two species and two hearts who had kept faith across time and space. Friends and leaders from both worlds attended. Ethan and Liara stood together side by side, hands clasped. The twin suns reflected off the crystal towers, and the crowd witnessed not only a promise kept, but the power of belief and integrity. Liara leaned slightly toward him, whispering softly. "You remembered?" Ethan smiled, warmth spreading in his chest. "I always keep my promises." The twin moons rose in the night sky, casting silver light over the land and reflecting in the shimmering waters. For the first time, Ethan felt that his life, his words, and his actions had truly mattered. He had made a joke, a careless promise, but it had grown into something far greater than he could have imagined. It had become a symbol of hope, courage, and humanity's enduring spirit. Liara squeezed his hand gently. "This is just the beginning," she said. Ethan nodded. "Then let's make it a beginning worth remembering." Together they watched the stars, knowing that the promise made on a sunlit village on a distant planet had traveled across time and space, and in doing so, had reminded the galaxy of the true strength of humans, their ability to care, to honor their word, and to inspire hope. And in that moment, humanity had once again shown the galaxy why they were worth believing in.